Okay, today we're going to show you how to remove the planetary gears, re-grease the planetary gears, put a sealant on the cable entry into the motor, because this is an issue that we have at the moment where there's some water ingress on some of the motors. We want to show you how to seal that up. We want to show you how to replace the planetary gears, and there's a wave washer inside the motor we want to remove as well. Plus we want to grease up the planetary gears with some additional aviation grease, which is this stuff here that Isaac is kindly putting together for us, and that is a fantastic job to do. I can tell you, you don't want to be doing that. Anyway, there's some tools that are required, an impact driver or screwdriver, a 17mm spanner which fits a tripod gear removal tool, or a three-legged puller, whatever you want to call it. And Steve Weeks is going to kindly show us how to do this. So fire away. So the first thing to do is obviously to remove these screws, and it's very important that you put some pressure on the screw. They're usually Loctite in, and we don't want to strip the threads, either removing them or putting them back into the motor case. So what we're doing here is just removing the case, or the cap that goes on the case. So there are 6 small M4 screws that hold that in place, and as you can see, usually the motor case will just separate pretty easily from the actual case of the motor. So here Steve will now remove that. You can just flip it upside down like he's done, and in most cases the case of the motor just separates really easily, and you can see inside here the lack of grease on a brand new motor here. That's what we found to be a problem, and we need to apply some additional aviation grease to this to bring it up to a proper working level. As you can see on the planetary gears here, there's minimal grease. I'm obviously not very happy with this, and I'll be speaking to the motor company about it. I already have several times, but it gives us the opportunity to show you how to do this. Now there's a wave washer that's been fitted to most of these motors, and it's a very small wave washer that, as you can see. I want to remove that. What's been happening is that this wave washer has actually fallen apart with some wear and tear, and it gets into the planetary gears, the bits of it, and destroys them. So we want to remove this. We don't need it. The motor company has said we don't need to have that in there, which is interesting in the first place, but we'll run with their advice. So we're going to remove that like so, and now we're going to apply some additional grease to the planetary gears, and then we're going to do some resealing of the cable entry. So next step will be to grease. Okay, so the next step that we're going to do is to show you how to remove the planetary gear set from the motor. Now the easiest way to do this, sometimes you can just do it by hand, but it's best to use the tool, and we would recommend using this 3-legged puller. This is a 150mm 3-legged puller, and it does it really easy. So Steve will show you how to do that. It's very simple. As you can see, there's already a little receiver hole there for this type of tool. This is the proper way to do it. This is how they do it in the factory, so we'll show you the same. We just set the legs in place and hand tighten it, and in this case it's coming off quite easily, so I wouldn't need to use a spanner in this case, but we'll show you how. And just wind it away. It's not a tight fit, but there's a keyway on this that stops the gear from moving around, as you can see. Oops, dropped.
Just be careful.
Just be careful with that. Anyway, so there's your planetary gear removed. Obviously this is a brand new one, so we don't have to replace it, but if you had to, obviously this would be the first step. So we're just going to apply some grease to this and then refit it, and then we'll show you how to seal off the cable entry point. Okay, so we're going to apply some grease to the planetary gear set. We can use a reasonable amount of it, not a whole tub, but we've sent little jars like this out to the repairers that should be sufficient for their needs, but obviously we have an industrial tub here, so we're just going to apply some grease just with a knife is fine, or a screwdriver, whatever you want to do, but use it pretty liberally, it's no problem. I don't think you can use too much on this. And so grease all 3 gears and then we'll stick it back in. So we've re-greased our planetary gears. We can now fit this back on to the motor, ensuring that the spline lines up with the keyway lines up with the slot in the planetary gear set. There. So that's now refitted, grease is applied, and we can now fit the motor case back over the top, which we will do now. So once it's in the vise, you can actually now fit the motor case straight over the top. It's much easier to do it this way, and it just slots in place. We can now just flip it over and put the screws back in. However, before we do that, we're going to show you how to seal off the cable entry on both sides of the plate. In addition to the planetary gear, it's a good idea to also apply a little bit of grease to the ring gear on the motor case. We did give the planetary gears a fair greasing before, but look, it's not a bad idea just to throw a bit more onto the ring gear itself. So now we're going to show you how to seal off the cable entry on the BPM motor, and we'll again need to use our 3-legged puller to remove the motor case from the motor. Just need to wind that out. Fit the legs over the top and do it up. And that just gently removes the motor case from the axle. One of the points to note on this particular motor case is that the bearing that sits on the other side of this here will not pass through with the cable. This is an issue that we're working on, but we don't expect to have to replace these bearings that often, but at the end of the day I will have a solution for this later on. So now that we've removed the motor case cover, we can now work on sealing off the cable entry, and Steve will do that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is apply some marine silicone to the cable entry on the motor. As you can see here, we've just begun that. This is to ensure that, or to stop or prevent water from entering the motor through this point. Without this, we know that water can get into the motor, and this will prevent it. So what we're using is some Sticker Flex silicone, and we found that works pretty well. We can be pretty liberal with this, no problem. So that's on the inside, and then we can replace the motor cover. Okay, good. Now we'll replace the motor cover and do the same on the other side. We'll just fit this rubber seal, well it's not really a seal but just like a cable protector if you like, and we're just going to grease on the inside and the outside here. Not grease, sorry, silicone. I keep doing that one. Silicone both sides, and that should prevent water getting into that point. So we'll put some tape around that and hold it together so that when the silicone dries off, it's firmly in place. Okay, so we'll just show you how to put the motor case back onto the motor. You can do this by just flipping the motor upside down and fitting it as so. Put it back in the vise. Make sure you use soft jaws, piece of aluminium, rather than straight onto the thread of the motor axle. As you can see, the motor axle does have a flat spot on both sides that you can clamp on. Just make sure you're doing that rather than onto the thread. Really important when we put this back together that you do opposite sides, screws first, and then hand tighten up in the end. We don't want to over torque with the impact driver. We'll hand screw these in tight after we've finished. So now we will hand tighten the 6 screws. A firm tightening of these by hand is all that's required. Okay, we just want to get you guys to rotate the axle so that the motor cable is entering the motor from the underside of the axle and the underside of the fork. When the bikes were first sent out, the motor cable was running from the top side, and we believe this is causing some water ingress problems. So we need to rotate that 180 degrees. Anytime you take the wheel off, whether it's for a tyre, tube, anything, brakes, anything like that, just rotate it around, have the motor cable come from the underside. If you do this with the resealing of the entry point here, we wouldn't expect to get any water into the motor.